Good morning, Anne.
Good morning, James.
And good morning, everybody. Thank you for listening. If you haven't tuned in before, for the next half an hour or so, Anne and I are going to have another conversation. We have no plan or script in particular. We shall see where it goes. And fingers crossed, as always, you enjoy listening.
Good.
Are you happy to begin, Anne?
I am, yes.
I thought this morning I could ask you about dealing with grief and people passing.
Right.
The reason I ask that is I know over the Christmas period and the New Year period, a number of people have had family members, people close to them, friends and family, who have passed. And it isn't uncommon for this time of year, pre-Christmas, Christmas and New Year, to be a time where certain people and a number of people do pass. So with your vast life experience and wisdom, I thought it is always of value to hear what you have to say. And if it's okay with you and you feel comfortable to share some of your experiences, stories, thoughts,
yes,
on the subject. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect
I hope
sense.
So.
Yes, it's
okay,
perfect sense.
Okay, over to you then.
It's always a difficult subject, really, grief, in a way, because it's one of those things that is what's the beginning and what is the end.
Yes.
As with life itself, never mind grief, with our lives ourselves, what is the beginning, what is the end? And I feel this with grief, but having experienced many people passing, death always seems a harsh word to me. You know, it's just the word itself, the sound of it, death.
Yes.
It's so finite to me that
yes.
if somebody comes to me and says somebody's dead, it makes me take a breath, really, because it's so finite.
Like a full stop.
Like a full stop.
Yes.
And I don't see death as a full stop.
No.
To me, it's a continuation. So for a very short time, I'd like to give you my experience of how I see death or how I saw death.
Okay.
When I have watched people.
Okay, that would be really interesting. Okay, yes, please. Yes.
And I do say that word pass. Is because it took me a while having witnessed, and I'm not talking about my loved ones here, so that have passed on, people I know. I'm talking about experiences within the hospital.
Yes.
Of what gave me my understanding of the passing.
This was while you were a nurse.
I was nursing, yes.
Yes.
So I put a deep thought into things, and I don't know, I have to have an association with something for me to understand it.
Okay.
So for me to learn something, I have to write it. So there always has to be, I have to work things out in my own mind.
Okay.
And through my own hand and heart. So watching people, at first I didn't understand myself, because obviously I was only very young. So going into a room, and this happens with all nurses, they will go into a room and they will come out and they will say, "Death's here tonight." And we all said exactly the same.
Okay.
So I would go into a room and I would come out and I would say, "Death's here tonight."
As in there is a presence.
It's a smell.
A smell, okay, that's interesting.
Smell. It's a definite smell.
A definite smell.
Yes.
And it was something that you and the other nurses would agree upon?
Always.
You shared in commonality the smell?
Yes. We didn't even ask. You get to a stage where you don't say what is it or anything. They come out. You don't go in and smell it because you just know it's there.
This is before somebody has passed?
That's before they've passed.
Okay, a precursor to the incident. Okay.
Always before.
Always before,
so
okay.
You know it's there, ready to take them.
Wow.
That night.
Okay.
So now to give you a little bit of understanding of how I see, and I'm not saying... This is my
absolutely,
thoughts.
Yes.
It's not anybody else's.
Just for a point of clarity, with this discussion, with our discussion, and for anybody listening, as with all of our previous podcast episodes and topics that we have discussed, and all future podcast episodes and topics that we will discuss, think for yourself.
Yes, please do that.
Anne is sharing your own personal thoughts and ideas.
My learning, really.
And I'm inviting you to do that.
Yes.
And I'm very well may share some thoughts and ideas myself. But you listening will have your own thoughts and ideas and personal experiences.
Yes.
And subjects such as this are deeply personal.
Yes.
So I hope it's without saying, but for the point of clarity, we deeply respect your own personal views and life experiences, and we mean no offence whatsoever to anybody. And if something is different to how you think or feel, or words that you would use, recognise that we are being as respectful as possible, and we do not expect anybody to agree or disagree. We hope to make you think. We hope to provide and share conversations of value and open up topics that are interesting and vitally important. And hopefully as well, maybe not this week, we shall see, it's enjoyable, and that you smile as well, and that we find hope and joy and goodness in what we explore together. And I will commit, this morning as well. So please continue, Anne. Please continue.
Okay. So when you go into a room, and this has happened with my father when he died as well. I didn't see my mother at all.
Yes.
And I will explain about that later. But with my father when he died, and other people that I've seen, is the people you will recognise that people will say to you, "There's a rattle."
I have heard people say that.
People will say they've got the rattle.
The death rattle.
That's what they call it.
Yes.
It isn't actually that. When you work with it, what it is, it's a breathing. It's a certain type of, like that.
Okay. A shallowness of breath.
It's not shallow. It's a.
Okay.
As if you're breathing in.
Yes.
You're breathing in, and what it is it can be every 10 minutes. Then it can be every 5 minutes.
Ah, that's interesting.
And
almost like the labour pangs.
It's no difference. So then as it gets to 1 minute,
yes,
and then if you're in the room with somebody, and because obviously sometimes you're there with people whose family are not there.
Yes.
And when you hear that last, you actually can see the body deflate, the physical body.
Yes.
As the spirit or the energy.
Yes.
Whatever you call it, spirit, soul, energy.
Okay.
It's like it leaves the body, so it's like going, and you're going upwards.
Yes.
And I'm doing actions here, by the way, so you can't see them. So the energy leaves the body through the chest area, just underneath where the sternum is.
Yes.
And you see it come out, and I can see it. Not everybody will do that. But as you see that, the body itself deflates.
Yes.
Now, the same when you have a baby, you go through the labour pains on the opposite end, and you're pushing. So the mother pushes.
Yes.
The mother pushes the baby out into this world, because it's a very dense world. This is why I say I don't like the word death. I only like passing, because they are passing on.
Yes.
But the other way is and they're going out of the body.
Almost like they're being drawn out.
Drawn out.
Yes.
Exactly, drawn out.
Yes.
So that's that's a long explanation of why I don't like the word death.
I have to say, and I'm sure everybody listening will agree, I'm sure of it, it's fascinating what you're discussing, and your personal experiences, your thoughts, your ideas, and your knowing is it's captivating, to be honest with you. And I'm sure lots of people will have more questions around the subject. So
as I say, that is what happened. So I was there with my father when he died.
Okay.
But with there's lots of, I don't know, I think it's, death's a funny thing, passing is a funny thing in this world, is because all of us have our own ideas of how we should behave and how we shouldn't behave. So I'm going into a different area of it now, is that when my mother went into hospital, and I won't go into the whole tale of how we built this up, she was ill for many, many years, but not very, very ill, but still on her feet. She would crawl up the stairs to work.
So she was chronically ill?
Yes. So she
Is that right?
Yes. She had bronchial asthma when she carried my brother, and then she had emphysema from passive smoking in the pub.
Wow.
So she couldn't breathe in or out. So she had to go...
That must
like
have been
that.
so frustrating.
So it was frustrating.
For her,
But
I mean.
She always wanted to work. Yes, for her. She loved work. She absolutely loved working.
Yes.
So she used to climb up 2 flights of stairs at the Linotype. Because by this time they'd given up the pub. And both my mother and father worked at the Linotype.
Yes.
Which is printing.
Yes. Factory,
yes.
Yes.
And she was an accountant.
Yes.
And my dad worked on the shop floor.
Yes.
And she used to literally crawl up the stairs to work and crawl to her desk and sit at her desk and work doing accounts.
Wow.
And somebody rang me one day, and one of her colleagues, and they said to me, "Why are you allowing your mother to come to work in that state?"
Wow.
And I said, "I don't allow my mother to do anything.
Yes.
She has her own mind. And she loves what she's doing. So I've got nothing to do with it."
Yes.
So she finished work. We went to have a checkup, and then to see a consultant. He wanted her in the next day, very determined lady, to go into hospital to have some tests. And she said, "I'm not coming in. I don't want to come in." And again, this is where control is taken over by people.
Yes.
He again said to me, "Your mother needs to come in now. I want her in now to have some tests done. She's really, really bad." And I said, "Again, why are you asking me that? She's sat in the chair here. Ask her." She says she doesn't want to go in. Ask her, not me.
Yes.
And when we got outside, I said to my mother, "Why aren't you going in tomorrow?" She said, "I'm going away with your dad." And I said, "Where are you going?" She said, "I'm going to Blackpool. This is a lady who needs to be in that afternoon.
Wow.
I'm going to Blackpool for a week."
I see where you get your determined, forthright nature on.
So brought up with it.
Yeah.
So
Strong character.
exactly. So
Yes.
she went away for a week.
Yes.
She looked fabulous when she came back, by the way.
Good.
She still couldn't breathe, but she looked fabulous.
Yes.
She met up with all the friends. She had all her friends from her being at school. She never lost any friends whatsoever.
Wow.
My mother.
Yes.
And she came back. She saw her friends, and we went into hospital the next day. Took her in the next day.
Yes.
And we got a phone call. We got a phone call in the afternoon saying, "Your mother's fallen off a trolley and she's fractured her skull."
Wow.
Nothing to do with the chest.
This is in hospital?
Yes, nothing to do with the chest, not the emphysema or anything. She'd fallen off a trolley.
A freak accident?
Freak. It was her own fault again, really, in a way, because she'd needed a bedpan as they were taking her for tests.
Okay.
They'd left her in the corridor like it happens all the time, on the bedpan. She wasn't very dignified for her, so she tried to get off it herself, tippled off and hit the concrete floor and
Ouch.
fractured her skull.
Right, okay.
So the next morning, I was taking my daughter to have a tumour off her leg. And as I was getting ready, I rang the hospital first and said, "How is she?" And they said, she's all right. She's not had a good night, but she's all right. And I said to my husband, "If you get a call today to go and work, don't go, because I'm coming back to go and see my mother after I've taken Julie."
Okay.
And the phone rang, so I thought that was Shell ringing him because he worked at Shell.
Yes.
So the phone rang, and he put the phone down and he just said, "Your mother's dead." Just like that. Within 10 minutes,
Yes.
she was all right, ringing. The next minute she was dead. So we had to cover it all up for my daughter's sake.
Yes.
But then what happened was, they told me what my dad didn't know. He was in work at Linotype.
So he did go in?
And he went he went to work.
Yes.
Yeah. My brother was in Blackpool with all his children. So they're telling me that my mother's dead. I've got to then go. This is what I'm talking about, respect now.
Yes.
This is my point. So I had to go I rang my brother, and he said, "It's not a joke, Anne. That's not funny." Why he thought I was joking about, I don't know, but he did.
Yes.
And because he idolised her. And I had to go to Linotype to what is HR now. And I went in and I said to the personnel officer there, I need to speak to Wilf. And he said, do you? Why? So I said, Alice is dead. Because obviously she'd worked there as well. So he says, what are you going to do? So I said, I've just got to tell him she's dead.
Yes.
This is two people who idolised each other, my mother and father.
Mm.
So he went to get him. Now, the linotype is really, really noisy.
Okay.
Can you imagine old printing machines that are printing away?
Yes.
And they have like little metal printing things.
Yes.
The noise is
deafening.
horrendous. It's deafening.
Yes.
So he came. I told my dad. My dad said, I said, you've got to go and identify her. And he said, I'm not identifying her. So I said, well, I'm not identifying her. I don't want to see her.
Okay.
My dad said, I don't want to see her. My brother's in Blackpool. So we actually rang his ex-wife to ask her to go and identify my mother.
Whose ex-wife?
Jack's ex-wife.
Your brother's ex-wife?
My brother's ex-wife, yeah.
Right, okay.
And she to this day, I'm grateful to her, 'cause she came to identify my mother because we didn't want to see her dead.
Okay.
So we're coming here, so that I've told him, obviously, very upset. Then we walk outside I go to take him to the hospital. We go outside, silence. Absolute silence.
All the machines are off.
All the machines were off. There wasn't one machine in the factory on. And all of the employees were stood all the way along. And we had to walk, my dad and I, through all these employees.
Yes.
Now, for me, that's respect. So that's what we should all, to me, that's what we should all try to achieve.
Yes. Your mother was given a guard of honour.
She was given a guard of honour, yeah.
Yes. Deservedly so.
Yes, she very deservedly so.
Yes.
And at her funeral, they had some speakers outside. Because there were people represented from every firm she'd ever worked from leaving school at 14.
She sounds like a very special lady.
She was, but for me, she was special. She'll always be special. But for me, there's a lack of respect now.
Yes.
In grief, because we're talking about grief, and we all need to know that our loved ones are respected.
Yes.
So years ago, they used to, if a hearse was coming along,
yes,
they would stop. Nobody would walk. Everybody in the road would stop.
Yes, and
until the hearse had gone by and take the hats off.
Yes, you're right.
And nobody does that now. They overtake a hearse.
Yes.
But in the streets, because I was born in terraced houses,
yes,
in the streets, everybody used to close the curtains.
Oh.
When somebody died, because my grandma was laid out in the front room.
Yes.
I remember you've only got a kitchen and a front room.
Yes.
So everybody goes in and shows their respects because the hearse picks them up at the house.
Okay.
So they're in the front room, but all the other houses close the curtains. Which is odd, isn't it, when you think about it? But that sign of respect is because they don't want to impose on somebody else's grief. They don't want to impose, they want to give them the privacy.
I understand.
So I feel we need to start looking at ourselves.
Yes.
Because grief affects us all in many, many ways.
It does.
But if somebody gives your loved one dignity at the end,
yes,
isn't that, to me that's important. That everybody should have dignity.
Yes.
And if you know that, it makes it easier for you.
Yes.
So.
And we can support each other in that.
Yes.
In the ways you've described previously, and other ways potentially moving forwards. People that we don't know and families that we don't know as they pass. We can stop. We can bow our heads. We can take our hats off.
Yes.
We can, at least in thought, if nothing else, think a respectful thought.
Yes.
And bring back a higher level of dignity.
Yes.
And I'm sure everybody listening, in your own ways, you will think along these lines anyway. But as a general population, as a general society, we can bring a higher level of dignity and respect back. Not necessarily just when somebody has passed, but in all areas of our lives. This is a potential growth in all areas to bring respect and dignity, decorum and decency back to the heart of our human community, back to our relationships, in the best of what it can mean. This is a very personal, emotive, sensitive subject, so it's necessary and right to be delicate. There are other situations where respect will be more noisy, will be more playful, will be more
Well, it's an Indian wedding or an Indian funeral.
Yes.
It's noisier, isn't it?
Well, that's a different culture.
It's a different culture.
And you're right, respect
yes.
manifests itself in different ways. So to each their own, in as much as what is right and true for each individual and each community, and we can respect each other's differences as well, which I think has been lost as well. We have an intolerance now, don't we, and an impatience for everything, not necessarily for everything in life. It's sped up so quickly that it's produced such a level of intolerance and, in a sense, irreverence. And I'm not, and I'm sure you're not, tying it down to any specific belief system.
No.
Or a relationship to anything more. But of course it's inclusive of that. It's the wider context of our relationship with ourselves, with each other, and with life itself. And how sacred and important and how meaningful that is.
Yes.
And certain moments, when they are marked and when we draw our attention to them, the sadness can be overwhelming, but it's a beautiful sadness. Not necessarily in every case, unfortunately not.
No.
But the opportunity is there in most cases to recognise, even in our grief, life is beautiful.
It's a celebration, isn't it? I'm talking about grief at this moment.
Yes.
But really, it's also a celebration of life itself.
Yes, and the stories that are told, and everybody reminisces and laughs, and it brings people together.
And it does, yes.
There can be a real togetherness, a coming together.
Yes.
Idealistically speaking and thinking about it, but absolutely you're right.
Yeah. And when my husband died,
It's a laugh a minute this morning, Anne, isn't it?
It is a laugh a minute. But when my husband died, and he died very, very suddenly.
Yes.
But my daughters and I went to the undertakers and we said, "Do you have a humanist minister?"
Yes, I think
we didn't really know what we were talking about.
We had this conversation, didn't we? In the previous,
did you have?
Yes.
And she said, "No. Well, it's double if we have one of those." So I said, "Well, don't you have a human vicar?"
And I thought you meant a robot vicar as opposed to a human vicar.
So she said, "Yes, we do."
Yes.
We've got one who's very, very nice. And this man came to the house and took all the details. And when we got to even when we got to the funeral directors, Jim always wanted a cardboard coffin. And they weren't, this is 17 years ago.
Yes.
And he wanted a cardboard coffin and they were only just coming in then. So we got to the undertakers and he came, knocked on the window. This is what I'm talking about, is how it affects you. None of us know. And he knocked on my window and I put the window down and he said, "We have a problem."
Yes.
And I said, "What's the problem?" So he said, "It's only got cardboard lats under the coffin.
Right.
There's no base to it. So we can't get him. We're going to have problems getting him off the gurney. He's going to have to go in a gurney. So on the gurney, he'll have to go in. We can't lift him off because he'll fall through. So we've got to be very careful when we get him out." So my daughters are sat in the back and I'm sat at the front. And one of my daughters said, "Why? Why is that?" And she said, "Well, he's heavy." And the other daughter said, "But my dad's never been heavy. He's always been slim." So the other daughter said, "Yeah, but when they're dead, they're heavier."
Yes.
And this is all before anything's happening.
Yes.
So one of them looked at the undertaker and said, "Is that true?" And he said, "Yes, that is true. It is."
Yes.
So, of course, all the way to the creme, I'm thinking is every bounce, every bump you go over, it's going to jump and Jim's going to fall out at the bottom. So you see, even in grief,
yes,
you still can find humour.
Yes.
Because that's what he would have wanted. We don't have to be miserable.
Absolutely. And that links wonderfully, beautifully to what we have previously discussed about humour as a means of medicine, of healing, and of a way of dealing with grief and difficult emotions in a particular moment. There's a time for everything, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Maybe that is apparent to everybody listening. Maybe it isn't. But I suggest for all of us to remember there is a time to cry. There is a time to laugh. There is a time for everything.
Yes.
And it isn't always what we'd expect.
No.
It isn't always what we'd expect. One thing that I think about, I'm aware of, and I invite you, Anne, and everybody listening to think about and recognise, and I hope it isn't too often that it is recognised, but I feel it's worth recognising, is how beautiful somebody is when they cry.
Yes, I agree.
I don't mean in any way, shape or form, in any sadistic way of taking pleasure from anybody's suffering. Literally the opposite. I mean literally how beautiful a human being is, how beautiful they look and how tender they feel, and how much love can come over and out and through all the people that are involved, because there is a real beauty to somebody. When somebody cries, there is such beauty.
And crying in happiness as well, isn't
Absolutely,
it? Crying
yes.
in happiness, it's different, isn't it?
It's a different feeling. No less of meaning, but different. Thank you for sharing your stories this morning, Anne. Thank you for always sharing your wisdom, your stories, your insights. I know that people will agree, I know it, that it's so important to hear about your life experiences and how valuable they are and how important, vital, necessary it is to remember them now before they're gone, before it's lost, before in life the threads of decency and goodness are potentially severed, but they are not going to be. No. And we are keeping them alive, and we're going to regrow with everybody listening, if you would like, goodness again and decency again and a strength and a courage and a truth and a humanity.
It's by example, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Unless we start these examples again and show our children, we
Yes.
will lose them. And everybody in passing and leaving this earth deserves dignity and deserves recognition.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't matter what their life was. They've lived a life here. It's not for us to judge, but they all deserve dignity and love at the end.
Yes.
And that's including the people and their loved ones.
Yes. Yes. We remember our humanity when we recognise the humanity of others.
Yes.
And
definitely.
we can recognise who humanity is in a feeling. And as said before, you may describe things differently. You may feel slightly differently, or maybe you feel very differently to what's been discussed this morning. We genuinely mean nothing but the highest of respect to all of you and everybody. Yes. And Anne is sharing her personal experiences bravely, courageously, openly, and wonderfully. And it's a privilege to be here with you, Anne, and listen to you. And I'm sure and trust, I am sure that is a privilege for everybody listening. So genuinely, thank you. Yeah. I'd also like to recognise that a number of you have left comments on the YouTube channel and social media platforms, and some of you have also now posed some questions, have put forward some questions. We have got the questions, and in the coming weeks we are going to address some of them, and over time our intention is to address all of them. So thank you for listening, thank you for responding, thank you for your engagement, thank you for subscribing, for liking, for sharing. We really, genuinely, wholeheartedly appreciate it. And please keep it coming. And it really does help if you feel that these conversations are of value. It helps get that message out there, get this community to grow, if that's something that you would like. So I think we best leave it there, Anne.
We had. And quickly, once again.
Yeah, always, every week, quickly. So thank you for listening. Have a wonderful weekend or a wonderful week whenever you are listening to this. And we look forward to being with you. and to speaking with you next week, next Sunday.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye.